Do the words free time or relaxation sound foreign to you? Perhaps you've been stuck in the office too long, battling cyber threats or worrying about the next strain of ransomware. Let Sophos help provide peace of mind 24/7, 365 with cybersecurity delivered as a service. Because we want you to get back to your weekends, family dinners, and everything in between. And you'll get there with Sophos. Visit securityweekly.com/Sophos to learn more. The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Fortra is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Fortra's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Fortra's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra, Fortra.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We are recording live in Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this interview segment is Brian Kenyon. He is the Chief Strategy Officer for Island.io.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Island's gotten a lot of press lately, out building an enterprise browser. But before we get there, like I'm an app user data guy. Okay. So I love the space, and I think what most people don't realize is that the browser is like the main interface into all modern applications. So it falls in the app realm to me, but I don't think most people think of it as an application sometimes.
Absolutely not. And I don't think most people think of it. It's really just a gateway to your content, whether that just be in your personal life, browsing the internet, or the content or what organizations would consider their data inside the corporate world.
Right. And so we understand the challenges with application security and protecting my applications and all the downstream effects, but we don't think about protecting the browser or how the browser is actually a potential security loophole in the overall process.
Well, I think we've always understood the challenge around the browser. What we've not been able to do is really anything about it. So what we've done as practitioners and as manufacturers of cybersecurity solutions is we've built around it. And so we call it, network DLP, we call it web gateways, we call it next-gen firewalls, we call it CASB, we call it packet brokers. Like, these are all technologies that oscillate around the browser to try to give an organization some control of what it can or can't do.
Right.
But we've never thought about actually just controlling the browser until recently.
Right.
And that's what we've really done at Island.
Yeah. We did make one progress. We did kill Internet Explorer, finally.
Yes, although, Internet Explorer still lives around and lurks.
Okay.
Microsoft has left a lot of the rendering components on the OS, which is good, because unfortunately a lot of those apps haven't gone away. Some of the largest banks, some of the largest corporations live and die by apps that were written 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And so having that compatibility back to those previous versions is actually a really important part of our business as an enterprise browser.
So what's the root problem with the browser? Like, if you could narrow it down to one or two things, like what is instinctively just wrong about the existing browser?
The browser in its current form as a consumer-based browser is inherent trust. And so let me take you on a little exercise with this. So you've authenticated, you have your rights to get to the data, you're inside an application like Salesforce, or it doesn't matter, ServiceNow, something an organization's written. Your rights and your roles say that you can see the data. So what does it do? The data renders to the browser screen. Now the problem is, you now have lost all control of that data, because somebody can take a screen capture, they can copy and paste it, they can print it, they can save the HTML. All of your wonderful network solutions do nothing when that end user's on the NPC with the data. And so what the enterprise browser is really helping organizations do is not only get control and secure the browser as a vector, but it's to help organizations secure the data from escaping from all of the channels that have been left unprotected over the years.
So we give people access to the system, but then we give them the loophole by just rendering anything they wanted in the browser, and now we have a data security problem.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way, right? Like, think about how a call center was in, kind of the pre-pandemic days. You'd show up for work, you had a desktop computer, you went into almost like a skiff-like environment where you weren't allowed to bring your device in, you weren't allowed to bring paper and pencil in, but you had a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, and a phone. And you got on the phone and you worked with customers all day. Then the pandemic hits and all of these people go home. And guess what? They still need to access the same data.
Right.
And so how do you prevent that data from then leaving that session of a browser and remaining on that device? Very hard to do. A lot of organizations had to operate with exceptions just because they had to keep the doors open and the lights on.
Right.
But they knew inherently there was risk to it.
Right. So if I wanted to start from scratch and build a new browser that has all the privacy and security controls in it, where would I start?
That's a great question. In 2020, when we started Island, it had already really taken form that Chromium had become the standard for the modern browser. So Chromium's the open source package that powers Chrome, Edge, Brave, Opera, many of the other variants. And it's really become the standard, not because you believe in Google or Microsoft or any of the other vendors. It's become the standard because of the way the user experience is. The way it renders and paints the screen, the way you can bookmark, save passwords. That's become our favorite. That's what we're comfortable with. So that's become the enterprise browser, if you will, by default. And so that's where we started. We started with the exact same user experience. It's not in the cloud. It's not rendering pixels to a browser.
Right.
It's an actual browser that the end user can leverage.
Because that's been the other approach to this is don't run the browser locally, run it up in the cloud,
Right.
only show the pictures of it. That would isolate the browser and therefore isolate any potential attacks. Your approach was a little different. Give the end user something on the endpoint to use Chromium as the base, and then create security wrappers around it.
That's right. And so by actually being the browser itself, think of the things that simplify, right? I'm pre and post encryption. So worrying about the cipher and how to break and inspect it and be on the wire and try to figure out, are you really moving data through that channel or not? It becomes really simple for me. I see everything the user's trying to do, and I see everything the web server's returning with. And then by policy, I can determine what's acceptable or not acceptable.
So you don't need a man in the middle.
No man in the middle. It's wonderful.
Yes, it is. All right, so I start with Chromium. What's the first security control capability you put into that new browser?
So we called it last mile controls. And so if you think about what are the things that are missing from your cloud technologies and your gateway and your network technologies, it's everything that happens with that user at the keyboard, at the monitor, right? It's can they copy and paste that data? Can they take a screenshot of that data? So we call these last mile controls because it's truly the controls at the actual action. And so we built those in as our first, which are copy and paste controls. But not just can you copy and paste. Where can you copy from and where can you paste to?
Oh, interesting.
Because it's not good enough to just say I've blocked all copy and paste. You'd see crazy end user revolt, right? And so what we've said is we'll give you the opportunity to build a boundary of data, a boundary of applications where people can share data across them but nowhere else. We did the same logic with print and save and screenshots, and that's something in 20 years of cyber I've never been able to prevent is somebody taking a screen capture. But thanks to the likes of streaming apps, operating systems like Mac and Linux and Windows have really built in DRM. So now we can call DRM functions and actually prevent the screen capture from actually happening.
It's interesting. So you're actually building almost like a DLP within the browser.
Yes.
Right? Because that's what DLPs are trying to do, right?
Absolutely.
Right? They're trying to control what you can copy, paste, move, save around in this new data security world. But instead of doing it at the endpoint, per se, I mean, you're doing it at the browser, which runs on an endpoint, but you're embedding DLP really into the browser.
Exactly. And at the browser, I can get far more granular than DLP can traditionally get. So I'll give you a great example. We have a call center customer that said, listen, most of my call center employees are still remote. Any PII data, even though the application's going to serve it, I want it redacted by default.
Oh.
Then I want my call center employee to selectively unmask the data they actually require to complete the call. On the back end, we send log files that said, hey, Brian unredacted this data at this time. So you have full attribution as to what happened. But that's something DLP can't do because it's literally looking at packets on the wire saying, is this data okay to be displayed?
Right. Where you're actually affecting the DOM.
You got it.
Right.
Exactly.
So you're doing it right at JSON layer, right?
Now you get it. So now if you think about that, what else can I do? And this is where we integrate very tightly with the business operations because there's many things. You think about financial services sector, you see these big finance companies getting fined because of WhatsApp and LinkedIn messaging, which is unregulated because it's untracked. We can render LinkedIn without the messaging component. We can render LinkedIn without the post buttons. So we can actually exert complete control over what gets displayed to that end user.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of cool, right? Because now you're affecting what gets displayed from the DOM based on the JSON that's coming back from the service. But how easy is it to manage then? Because that's the other thing, right? Is granular control is awesome, but it comes sometimes with a cost of administration.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so what we found is, and we're 70 customers deep at this point, which is a remarkable blessing for where we are in our journey. But what we found is a lot of every one of those last mile controls I talked about, because we integrate with identity, it's really simple to say, by your role, here are the things I'm going to allow. And those are all radio button turn on, turn off, select the apps you want to create a boundary with. When you start getting into, I want to modify the application, then yes, there is a little customization to that. But where you're doing it in areas where you have no other choice. You know, you think about an old application that you built 10 years ago, I want to add multi-factor auth. Well, the browser can enforce multi-factor auth. So what's better, doing it there, slight customization, or reconvening a development team to actually go build that functionality?
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting use cases. All policy driven under the covers.
Yep.
So basically you authenticate into your browser based on who you are and what policies you have. It dictates what gets rendered, what doesn't get rendered, and all the control.
You get we splash a home screen to the user, much like we've been taught with Okta and IDPs. You have this home screen, but it's completely dependent on policy. So, I'll give you a great example. Like my home screen when I'm on my work PC, my managed PC has all of my applications. When I go home and work for my BYOD, there's a few of them that are missing. I can't touch our production environment. I can't do certain things. So because we understand the device we're inherently installed on, benefit of being locally installed, we can actually actuate different policy based on what we're seeing at the OS layer.
Oh, that's interesting. And then you were also talking about customization. Like you can customize the look, the feel. Like every company can have its own kind of look and feel what its browser looks like.
Yeah, so I kind of tongue-in-cheek always say we built the enterprise browser to be your enterprise's browser, and that's exactly right. We envision organizations taking the look, the logo, the icons, the look and feel of the address bar, the dialogue messages that get presented to the end user. All of that can be customized and tuned, so you're giving your employee the experience they expect when they're working at your
benefits of a secure browser? Probably immeasurable?
I don't know how long we have left. In all reality, there's a couple of things right off the bat that really strike a chord. Number one, we give you full visibility. So you can imagine as the browser, we see every action that's taken.
Yeah.
And so organizationally, and this is a policy decision, you can run the spectrum from, I want to record every single thing that user's doing in this application because they're doing a wire transfer, SWIFT, to this person's in their personal health care, I want to anonymize it and not see anything, and only report violations back. And so we can run the gamut. When you think of organizations in EMEA that have to do with works councils, and the works councils like us because we give end user indicators as to whether the organization's monitoring your actions, whether you're browsing privately and anonymously, so you can be very clear on those things. So visibility is a big one, control, and then the other big one is organizations still to this day struggle with unmanaged devices, whether they're third-party contractors or trying to do BYOD. And so we are a very simple way to get a foothold on an unmanaged device.
Right. Yeah, because if you can't get to the application,
what are you
don't
doing?
Get there. Right.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything.
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a great way to deal with, the shadow IT discussion is it doesn't exist, or at least you can identify it.
Right off the bat.
And deal with it.
That's right.
And help with the overall asset management problem, which we still have in the industry. All right. Did we cover all of your good
I
features?
swear, you must have hit them all, yeah.
Did I hit them all?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
If anybody wants to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/island, RSAC. Thank you for watching and listening.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. This interview was sponsored by Sumo Logic. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabri, and joining me for this interview is Rhett Dillingham, VP of Product of Sumo Logic's Security Business Unit. Welcome, Rhett.
Thanks, Adrian. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. It's a good topic we've got for today. We're going to talk about security automation as well as some other topics. And I think most people are aware of Sumo Logic, but maybe we start there. We just give a quick synopsis of what you do and what you guys focus on.
Absolutely. We provide a platform for application operations and security operations for continuous intelligence. And here are talking very much about the news we have around security operations capabilities introduced in the platform.
Okay. Are we allowed to say SIM?
We are allowed to say
that's a
SIM.
component. Obviously, it's not the only thing you do, but
Yes.
I think that helps people bucket it in their mind a little bit better.
Yes. The naming in this space has been an adventure, I think, for many firms. And
I work in marketing, so I get it. I totally get it.
We still enjoy the SIM name. Our offering for the security operations use case set is termed Cloud SIM, and formalizing the SIM name and information, literally information management and event management, and what capabilities we offer there, built on our log analytics platform, and have joined that with the Cloud SOAR offering, as we call it, Cloud SIM, Cloud SOAR, and very much use those names, although there's plenty to be had in naming evolution around here. And so we very much think about our platform as a security operations platform joined with an observability capability platform for application operations.
And you're probably not aware of this, but I am a longtime customer, but in the free tier.
Okay.
Just for my home lab testing stuff, it's great for that.
Absolutely, because our orientation and history has been make it easy to bring logs in, get initial value, automate as much as possible of collection, and just get to initial value in time to value orientation. We have taken that approach with our SIM as well.
And because I'm already so familiar with it, if I run into a project where I need those kinds of services, like at a larger scale, that's going to be the first thing I go with, because from using the free tier for years, I'm already totally familiar with it. Like I know I can get up and running like that.
Yes, and this is part of being a cloud platform vendor in the security space, is try to make it self-service adoptable as much as possible so you can take initial steps, trial, feel out what use cases you want to apply, and then we build from there with you.
Yeah, so security automation has been a big topic for a while in security. Certainly everything's very dynamic. The threats that we're chasing, I think maybe 2 years ago, Jay Jacobs and Wade Baker did an analysis of what the top topics were at RSA for many, many years. Sure. And just the fact that they're constantly changing, I think is evidence of how challenging it is to stay on top of things. So automation seems natural to reach towards. We can't always get the talent that we need, and it's, just staffing, there's overhead associated with products and things like that. So just kind of tackling that people aspect of automation. I think there's two main things I want to dive into here. And, first is obviously somebody has to create the automation in the first place. You have to make sure it works. Whether you're talking about SOAR or you're scripting something between APIs manually, there's a certain talent that you have to have for doing that. And, making sure it works correctly. It's got to be monitored. If it breaks someday, somebody has to notice and go fix it, right? So how do you tackle that whole people component to it? And then the next thing after that I want to get to is automation itself is scary. Telling anything to automatically happen in production, can come with consequences.
Sure.
So let's tackle the people aspect first.
Sure. Let's just step up that stack that you enumerated there. So first of all, we have come at the space from a cloud platform vendor perspective, alleviating the security teams from having to operate their own stack. We take that operational ownership on. They can focus on value derivation from that rather than having to spend resources in operations. Second, take that into collection, where there's an opportunity to integrate cloud to cloud for data collection. We're just offloading that work from the customer in a way that's just alleviating them of that operational alerting and so forth from their collection side onto us. And then they just have to be aware of what's going on in the source of that data. From there, you can get into, okay, I'm working through the end-to-end security operations workflow from collection to detection to investigation and response. What can I automate in this chain? And there tends to be an over-rotation towards the investigation response portion.
Yeah.
When we've put a lot of focus over the past few years into how do we automate as much as possible of investigation by clustering what we know better than anyone else from that information and event management perspective into what is a refined, true positive alert.
Yeah.
As much as possible
so
on behalf of that person.
you're talking about reducing my 30-tab workflow down to maybe 1 or 2.
Exactly. And then once you start into the further tabs, you're into investigation and response, where we want you to be able to easily compile information into that platform. Enrichment is the next sort of example. So this week, Sumo Logic is announcing that we've integrated the workflow automation portion of our Cloud SOAR offering as part of our SIM. Mm-hmm. So we're providing a stepping stone short of full SOAR adoption for users to take a next step in automation to go from, yes, I've clustered entity relationships around the investigation work I'm doing in triage, and now I'm automating enrichment into that alert and refining it. And then from there, I can automate notifications. It's sort of the stepping stone of what automation should be, and investigation response to complete that workflow. And then from there, we can get into more complexity in what SOAR has classically addressed, and our Cloud SOAR very much does, in those other aspects of complex manual and automated workflows.
Yeah, definitely. And it's I remember the first time I used a SIM that just pulled in like reverse DNS for an IP address. Such a huge time saver, especially if I'm looking at a ton of data. Like I don't have to have this command line open, in another window or some kind of DNS lookup tool in another window, and just one at a time trying to piece together this picture. Just all these little bits of data you have to go out and collect. Yes. And I think SOAR has been huge for that. And even without SOAR, like a lot of the modern tools will just automatically pull in that data, so you just mouse over or something like that.
Yes, and in a
lot of important UX and UI design there too, right?
There is, and SOAR came to be defined in a certain way versus SIM in the technology stack for security operations in a way that lumped a few technologies together and a few feature capabilities together in a way that has made it unapproachable for a certain segment of enterprise, and that jumping off point has been too difficult for many. Mm-hmm. And just having conversation this morning with a firm that has wrestled with when they're ready for that. Mm-hmm. And so I think as we think about security operations utilizing a platform, we want to make those incremental steps more granular and easier to adopt and utilize. And so that's hence back to our taking that workflow automation, making it easily and complementary available in our Cloud SIM, just to help further that along, regardless of the nomenclature of what is SIM, what is SOAR. It's a platform for security operations.
Right. And it occurs to me maybe the automation being scary thing isn't as much of an issue for you guys, since you're not changing security configurations and things like that. We're not changing production stuff. It's mostly you're ingesting event data, things like that, and the automation we're doing is on that. So there's not a whole, or correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a whole lot of danger to implementing automation in that work.
You're very much right. Another vector of the concern with adopting what has been considered SOAR technology has been the risk of over-automating and automating something beyond what the organization and the culture are ready for in automated response specifically. And really the way we think about that is you should be automating the work as much as possible for the efficiency of the resource challenge that you have in the staffing, training, and retention, and then stepping towards your first most common automated response types in that in that order, from enrichment into notifications to other systems, and then into response, just to make this more iterative, incremental, in efficiency gain for the team.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how sick are you of people asking how you're going to implement ChatGPT and large language models into?
Not at all.
Some of this work.
Because
not there yet?
No, we have. We have also announced that this week that we've integrated via our integrations framework for our SOAR into a ChatGPT provider of your choice. Mm-hmm. We have set up the out-of-box integration configuration for how you utilize the Q&A and chat capabilities. Just to bring that the knowledge of the internet modeled via that technology into the platform, so the users who are variably familiar with the utility of that can gain value from it, and the iterative questioning and whatever the responses are that are being utilized is captured within the investigation and the incident response.
Do you have any quick examples of what some of those use cases are? Is it things like, tell me what protocols run on port 445, typically, and TCP 445?
Generalized, yes, in that sense, or we're collecting from a variety of sources in alerts or raw data, and once you're into, I need to apply that to a certain technology, I can go pull in what are the normal or like most common remediation methods for that technology, and just surface that as readily available, and in part alleviating the tab proliferation.
Yeah,
this is. In one part, making sure that it's brought in to the user that might not be aware of the value of the information that's available via that technology, and the other is just, compiling more into the platform so it's available in a single place without having to roam around across tools, which is another major theme in CISO land and security team land is this tools consolidation.
And with my product hat on it, as I'm thinking about this, all you need is like a ChatGPT iframe or something like that, and they bring their own API key. You don't even have to feed the knowledge base.
Correct.
Because it's already in there. Like OpenAI has already done that work. Like you don't even have to feed it security-specific knowledge for that to work.
As long as you're comfortable with the value of the information coming from that corpus. Right. When you decide to contribute to that corpus is up to you.
So do you put a disclaimer like about hallucination and things like that? Like when you use this, it could make things up, right?
That is an organizational decision. If you've already decided this is useful, and you're just now into the iteration on how do we make sure that the questions we ask and how we templatize those are most useful for the team, we're capturing those and enabling you to set that up to be automated and available to each user, rather than you have specialists who figured this out and the others aren't using it.
So we've got just a couple minutes left. So I just want to. This will be like a speed round. Just maybe hitting some high points of what kind of things are you hearing from CISOs that they're struggling with today, and what are they going to be struggling with in the next 2 to 3 years? And is it mostly people bringing large language models to train on internal data? Because that's just been kind of that's my prediction. So I'm just throwing that out there that companies are going to start building these models internally and probably shoving the wrong data into it.
Well, I think that's on the outer band of what's out? Just core. I think there are some who are getting into that realm, but core starts with the efficiency and efficacy of the team, and that gets back to the automation topic and just in effect tool consolidation. Is a common theme, especially as the macro environment may continue to shift economically. So we are very much in a platform vendor orientation, bringing together SIM with the technology of SOAR integrated, and now we've layered UEBA capabilities on top of that. Essentially delivering modeling for user and entity behavior analytics in a much more accessible, addressable addition to our security platform than it has been as a standalone tool. So this aggregation of capabilities from a security operations point of view is addressing a tool consolidation interest that continues to come up in that sense. The other theme, sort of short of the how are we applying modeling in the development of own corpus and sort of that realm, how are we applying security operations across the company versus in our application development sphere? So as a vendor of observability and security platform use, where those two use cases conjoin in various ways, I mean, we are very much aggregating these technologies in a way that we're building a bridge between those two needs. So we're addressing the consolidation of alerts that come from the proliferation of tools in application security environments, and applying the clustering that we do and the technology like behavioral analytics that's immediately addressing, where the company security operations realm can help the application security operations realm with their needs. You can immediately apply first seen event modeling to your development lifecycle tools. These are very much similar needs, applying similar tech where applicable. Yeah. So that's theme two. So tool consolidation, bridging between security operations and company-wide versus application. And then we're into, how are we applying AI? So we've applied machine learning in various ways. We aggregate customer information on an anonymized way, and then model what is generating these clustered alerts that are aggregated across entities of what we see, and can indicate for triage value where we're more likely to find for you that you're going to see a true positive versus a false positive.
Right.
And work from there. Yep.
All right. Well, good stuff. Thank you, Rhett, so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Adrian.
To find out more about Sumo Logic, please visit securityweekly.com/Sumo Logic RSAC. If you can't stick around for the rest of the live stream or you're catching this afterwards, head on over to securityweekly.com/RSAC to find all of the RSA conference coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance.
All right.
Thank you, Rhett.
Thank you, Adrian.
Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. This interview was sponsored by Zscaler. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me today for this interview is Deepan Desai, Global CISO and Head of Security Research for Zscaler. So that's a really interesting title. I know CISOs are kind of a special breed at a vendor, right?
Right.
Like you have all sorts of different mixes of, looking out for the security of your own company, also being an evangelist, working with sales and helping to explain and sell the product, and but also you've got the head of research title.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your role there at Zscaler.
Absolutely. So it's definitely an advantage to be a CISO and head of security research on the vendor side. I have a global team of 200 plus experts.
Wow.
They're tracking threat landscape. They're continuously monitoring what's out there. And the goal is two-pronged, right? One is obviously we want to make sure the integrity of our own infrastructure is secured. But at the same time, we're also innovating our product, our detection technologies to keep up with the evolving threat landscape. So if new stuff come out, we want to make sure we're ahead of the game in blocking those, defending those, and helping organizations that rely on Zscaler to protect themselves.
Right. And I understand as part of that research, you have a new report out on phishing. What's the name of the report?
Yeah, it's a phishing threat landscape report. We do an annual one every year around this time frame. We also have a ransomware annual report that goes out in mid-year. But for phishing report, the goal was to study all the campaigns that we saw over 2022, and then also compare it to the year before. What changed? How are the threat actors changing their tools, tactics, and procedures? And why are we seeing so many of these attacks becoming successful? Phishing is important because it's the starting point. None of the attacks are now where they send the final malware payload in an email as an attachment and call it done. It starts with phishing, right? Yeah. Whether it's ransomware, whether it's info stealer, whether it's nation state. They want to get that initial foothold established, and that's where phishing is, in majority of the cases, the first delivery vector.
Yeah, and I imagine when you do this report, like some of the things, maybe the stats are a little bit different, up and to the right, maybe down a little bit, maybe the industry's gotten better at something. But what stood out the most to you? What really did anything really pop out this year?
Yeah, so in terms of raw volume, it continues to grow. We saw almost 47% increase in number of phishing attempts. And these are phishing attempts targeting enterprise users. Right? These are large global enterprises whose employees are being targeted. So 47% increase in those attacks. In terms of brands that these threat actors are leveraging, we saw Microsoft at the top, no surprise, because they have a lot of properties, right? Like SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365.
So it's like the skin of the phishing email is what you're talking about when you say brands?
The
theme.
Yeah, exactly. Which credentials are the bad guys after? So Microsoft was at the top, and then it was followed by things like Binance, the crypto exchange,
of course,
right? Wherever they're able to make cash, right? They're going to go after that. And then, like I said, I mean, phishing is just a starting point. Like it's a
initial foothold. Yeah,
full supply chain model where these gangs will establish that initial foothold and sell that access to the next level operators, who will then leverage that access for their call to objective, be it ransomware, be it stealer. Right? So that's how it functions. One of the key things that we noticed was, and I'm going into a little bit of specifics, but leveraging automation, machine learning to conduct some of these attacks. One of the campaigns that the team saw was around job scams. And this job scam is not new. It's been around for quite a while. What we saw over the last 2 to 3 months is these groups were taking advantage of the layoffs. It's kind of cruel.
Oh, yeah.
Right? All the layoffs that are happening in the tech industry, and they will monitor LinkedIn. They will monitor the companies that are still hiring. They will mirror those job posting on a newly stood up domain, which is very similar to the hiring company. And then they will start targeting these victims that were laid off, and they're like, I'm looking for a job. You will be able to find those on sites like LinkedIn.
Right.
And then once they are able to convince the victim to apply for the job, they now have a lot of sensitive information about the victim.
Yeah.
They will actually go ahead and conduct an interview where they will have the picture of a real recruiter from the hiring company used on their Skype profile. And the interview, victims will always pass the interview. They will get the job. And then they will ask them to pay a deposit, right? Something to get the IT equipment shipped to them. It's all refundable, but they never get the refund.
Right.
So that was one of the, I would say, cruel one, but
having to pay to start a new job is the key red flag there, right?
It's a key red flag, and some of them caught it.
Wait a minute.
Exactly. The other one, and this is something I'm actually presenting at RSA on Thursday. One of the talk track is around how these adversaries are able to bypass MFAs. And that's where the...
if I can just preface that, years ago we thought, hey, if we rolled out MFA, like this whole attack vector is going to go away, right? But it didn't happen.
Yeah, we're away from that. Like last year, people were saying, I was talking about, hey, gone are the days when you tell your users that, hey, there's this green padlock sign and you're all secure. That's no longer the case, right? Because they're using Azure, Google, AWS, their hosting sites.
IP addresses,
right? And the certificates are wildcard certs that are issued by Microsoft or
Let's
Amazon.
Encrypt.
Exactly, or Let's Encrypt, exactly. So in case of these adversary in the middle attacks, they're literally doing man in the middle. And the victim receives the phishing link. When they click on it, they are brokering the connection to the actual destination. So you receive a phishing email asking for your Office 365 credential. You click on it. You see a page that is very, very lookalike to Microsoft. It may be hosted on, say, Azure, which has Windows.net at the end, right? So very hard for...
Looks legit.
Exactly. Yeah. And your enterprise has MFA implemented, for instance, right? It will also ask you for that MFA token. And that's where you use your Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator app, and you enter the MFA. The kit will then connect to Office 365 or Google and establish that authenticated connection.
Really?
Yeah, and
they need what, at least two codes for TOTP to capture?
They just need one, just one MFA code, right?
Okay.
As soon as you enter it, they will
because
be able
they're logging in as you.
Exactly.
Ah, okay. I see,
then they're
I see.
able to persist that connection because, hey, remember this device option, right?
It'll create like an OAuth token or something like that.
Correct.
So they can keep it open. Yeah.
Correct. And that's where, look, when they have access to your mailbox, the
That's
exposure is still contained to you.
Then they can reset all your passwords to all your other things because the reset mechanism works through your email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The evolution we saw over there was they also started targeting things like GitHub. Now, it's not the single user getting targeted, it's entire organization that is at risk because your IP information is now available for them to exfiltrate using those established sessions.
Well, that's what we saw happen with ransomware too. Ransomware used to be individually focused, looking for $400 here, $500 here, $1,100, and then they realized they can hit a whole company.
Yes.
And do extortion at a much larger scale. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So yeah, the AITM is definitely another rising trend. And then the final one, and this falls under the AI/ML and automation piece as well, is where they're starting to use a combination of smishing and vishing as a vector to convince victims into clicking, performing certain financial transactions. And this falls under the business email compromise, right? They will have your CEO or your exec's voice recorded or recording. They will be sent as a voicemail to the victim. Hey, this is Deepan Desai. And then it just cuts off. And then they will follow it up with a text message saying, hey, I'm in an area where the network is really bad. Can you do X, Y, and Z for me? Right? And that's how they have been successful in many of the cases. So that's another one that we're tracking actively out there.
I've received a lot of the hey, I'm Doug Manoni. I'm stuck in a meeting. I need you to buy a bunch of gift cards for me or something like that.
Right.
And he's the CEO of Cyber Risk Alliance, and yeah, we've seen those before too.
So those are text messages, but now imagine you hear your CEO's voice coming in your voicemail, right? And you know that voice, right? Oh, okay, that does sound like my CEO. So that adds that additional
realism.
layer. Yeah, exactly.
Again, the red flag. When has a CEO ever asked you to go buy a bunch of gift cards? Right?
Exactly. Yes. So, yeah, that brings me to what the organizations can do in this case, especially this scenario that we just discussed. I mean, training is definitely number one, right? And training has to evolve. The green padlock piece that we discussed is no longer true. Nor can you train them, hey, these text messages and all. You need to have continuously updated training that tells your employees about what's out there in the threat landscape. So this should also include your phishing simulation exercise.
So you walk them through like the real scenarios we've been talking about, right?
Exactly. And then the security controls that you have in place should be leveraging those zero trust underlying principles where you're able to do two things. A, you're able to educate the user at the time they're about to make a mistake, right? So alerting them, hey, you're about to visit a site that's not safe. Don't enter your credentials. Don't download your files. Don't upload anything sensitive.
I think one of the biggest things in the last 10 years that happened is just a little thing in your email that says this came from an outside organization.
Exactly.
It's just a bit of text that's added to, the body of the email. But that's huge when it's trying to pretend like it came from inside.
Absolutely. And now imagine that similar notification or assistance in line on the network layer itself where you're about to connect and you see a page that says, hey, you're about to visit a destination that's not safe. So do not. And that has helped a lot of organizations globally. It's there. The organization needs to configure that. We offer that to our customers, and it has resulted in...
It's like a secure web gateway function?
It's a secure web gateway function, and you need to have the cloud-native proxy architecture to kind of intercept, terminate the connection, make a connection on their behalf, and then you're able to
or more of a CASB then?
No, this is inline CASB. I mean, you could call it CASB, but it has to be inline. You
Forward proxy.
Correct,
Gotcha.
The second thing is, and I'll hit up on the zero trust principle here. This is where me wearing my CISO hat, how do I look to secure my own environment? And when I talk to other CISO security execs, I always talk about 4 building blocks of implementing zero trust. Number one is, what can you do to reduce your external attack surface?
Yeah.
When an adversary is trying to plan an attack, they look at what all things are visible, whether it's your VPN, your public-facing assets, your cloud workloads. They start from there. So you need to have technology in place that allows you to reduce your external attack surface. Number 2 is preventing that initial compromise.
Yeah.
You need to have consistent security policy no matter where your users are, whether they're at home, in office, or at RSA conference, right?
Yeah.
You need to have that policy follow the user. Number 3 is where assume breach scenario, right? Which is the fundamental zero trust principle.
Exactly.
If your asset were to get compromised, it should
What
not...
can you jump to?
Correct. The blast radius has to be contained to that asset alone. That's the true fundamental principle of zero trust.
Otherwise, you're not doing zero trust.
You're not doing zero trust. And then finally, they're all after your data, right? So anything that egresses your assets, your servers, your endpoints, they need to go through a true inline data loss prevention engine. Right? And that's where, again, cloud native proxy architecture allows you to intercept those, apply your EDM, IDM-based dictionaries and block. Even in case of ChatGPT, like a lot of the organizations are leaking out.
I was going to say, we got a minute left. We got to fit in ChatGPT.
I know, that's the buzzword for this time. I mean, it has tremendous potential. We're leveraging it for solving many of the use cases. We're ahead on the threat detection side, AI ops, bunch of other. We're also guiding our customers on how to use it safely. But then at the same time, there is the risk of exfiltrating data inadvertently. So we've evolved our product to allow organizations to prevent that data exfiltration, which may be not intentional, right?
Or intentional.
Or intentional, right. So the goal over there is to allow the organizations to prevent that exfiltration, at the same time enable them to harness the power of large language models.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Excellent stuff. And we're right on time. And thank you so much, Deepan, for joining me today and letting me chat with you about this report. If you go to securityweekly.com/zscaler RSAC, you can find a link to this report and learn more about Zscaler. And if you can't stick around for the rest of the live stream or you're catching this afterwards, head on over to securityweekly.com/RSAC to find all of the RSA conference coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance. Thank you again, Deepan.
Thank you.
Yeah.